Hey, this is Larry Dillon from Scalable Insights Podcast, and today is a very special day. Really excited. My good friend, the myth, the legend, Gary Pica from Tru Methods. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. It's so great to see you.
It's good to see you.
We go back a long way.
We do go back a long way. So give us a little synopsis of like who you are, your background. Give us the 411 for anyone out there that doesn't know, your background.
So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, blue collar family. Went to Penn State. I got my degree. Let's just say that. Not much more. I wasn't the best student, let's just say that. And I got into sales, and eventually I stumbled into an IT business with a friend that I had grown up with at a time when the business was changing, and got some mentors. You are one of them. I met you at an important time and helped me with some things in sales. And we ended up scaling it, and by the time I sold it in 2005, we were the largest MSP based on the tools manufacturer worldwide. We had the most endpoints deployed. So timing, I think, is important, but I learned a lot of lessons. And then I started Tru Methods, and we started doing training and peer groups for IT providers. We called them MSPs, managed service providers. And then we built some software and called My IT Process, and we scaled that. And a few years ago, I sold that to the largest strategic software company in our industry, Kaseya. And today I still work with Kaseya. I sit on the board of a couple private equity companies that are acquiring MSPs. I have a couple software startups that I've invested in. And just really having fun at this point in my career.
Yeah. So it's, I think, it was like such a great moment meeting you. Like I think I've told you the story. Like Gary's humble beginnings in the IT business. We suited up. We got our inside sales team, got us an appointment to meet with this guy Gary Pica from Dynamic Digital. We suit up, suit and tie, drive out. Me and the sales guy, and we drive out to see Gary. And it's in this. How would you describe from the parking lot view?
Well, let's just say today that building's it's a strip mall, and today it's a gun shop. So that's what we were. We were a little tiny strip center, and we had this retail space that we turned into office that we were packing people into.
Yeah, it looked kind of shabby, and so we were like, "What is going on?" And Jay's like, "Well, there's a great place around the corner we can get lunch." And I was like, "Now let's go in." So we go in. And there were, I remember there were racks of computers like up against the window, the retail window. And then you were in, we went through this maze.
Way in the back,
no windows, like a lamp from home on like a really simple desk. And we sat down and talked to you, and it was a phenomenal moment for us. We're like, this guy is.
It laid out my whole master plan.
Yeah. And we knew you were not like, because we talk to guys and gals in the IT business every day.
Yeah.
And they would all be like, nobody else does what we do. Right. And we're trying to coach them, and they're sort of struggling. But when we met you, we're like, this guy knows his stuff. And I think you decided to go ahead, like right on the spot.
Right on the spot. And that was a big turning point. Like, you helped me really build the inside out sales model. And I, not only did I build multiple companies, I forgot to mention, while I owned Tru Methods, I bought, fixed up, and exited a second MSP. But right. I got the sales model, figured out. And I've taught hundreds and hundreds of MSPs, the fundamentals of inside sales.
Right. But you took it to like another level, and because it's not just sales, it's operations, it's management, it's all kinds of stuff.
It's command.
It is.
It's command over the business, which so few business people have.
Yeah. And you have your Schniz Fest. Do you still have it?
Yeah, we'll have 1,000 people there this January in Phoenix.
So Gary always invites me to the Schniz Fest, and you had like a guy with a guitar, electric guitar, playing on stage as you're doing this thing. But the coolest thing for me was you're walking around with all these people who, you know, are listening to you. And by far, because in my business, we meet with people, owners and the sales managers who are trying to drive growth. And so we can, you know, in about 15 minutes, we can size you up on a scale of 1 to 1,000, where you are. Are you D3? Are you high school level, Division 3, Division 2, Division 1, pro, you know, Super Bowl finalist, right? And by far, you are at the highest level of anyone that we had ever met. And then you just kept getting better and better and better. So you really boiled it down. But for me, walking around there, and now you're sharing all this information with these folks, and in the Schniz Fest or at the Schniz Fest, there's folks walking around who were maybe doing $1 million in sales. They were netting 5%.
Right.
You help them get to like 6 million with like 30%, 35% net profit. And then they sell and exit.
Yep.
Completely change their life. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm just, you know, just sharing the love, man. But it was funny because, you know, I'll talk to someone else there and, you know, I'll say, yeah, you know, Gary's pretty good. They don't know, you know, that I know you. And they're like, well, I don't like this part. I don't like that part. I don't like this part.
Exactly.
And they start to like extract all of these, you know, like Jenga. They're taking all the pieces of the puzzle out, and eventually it's going to collapse. And
which is a good lesson, right? Which is, to me, when I find someone who is doing what I would like to do, and they're willing to share with me, I swallow it whole.
Right.
I only improve it after I mastered it. Because if I knew better, I would be getting those results. I'm like, hey, listen, you're picking and choosing things. You've been in business for 15 years, and this is where you are.
Right.
If you knew how to do it, you already would have. Look, I've been running these peer groups since 2010, I think.
So explain to us what a peer group is, because and the peer groups that you're doing are not, I assume, are the elite level, or they're all different levels.
We bring people in at all levels. We have now 400 IT companies from around the world, and basically it is people that are in your industry.
Right.
You get into a group of 8 to 10 others, and within your group, non-competing markets. We have a benchmarking platform. So we normalize everyone's numbers, operations, sales, finance, so they can compare them. We make them do a special project every quarter to improve their business. And then we have meetings once a quarter for 2 days where they do a deep dive. You know, people always say, oh, I need to spend more time, you know, working on my business, not in it. Yeah, but you don't even know what that looks like. So here, we're going to hand it to you. So doing it over more than a decade, we have people that have been with us the whole time. Some of them, as you mentioned, they're selling their companies for tens of millions of dollars, right?
Right.
Others are happy, but they've only made incremental changes.
Right.
But they've all had access to the same information, the same training we provide, the same structure, the same benchmarking. So why doesn't everyone get exactly the same results? And early on, I frustrated myself the first couple of years. Like, I'm not explaining it good enough. So I made more videos till we had 200 hours of videos. And I realized it's not it. It's like, it almost goes back to a lesson I learned really early on from a book by Tom Hopkins called The Official Guide to Success, that in sales and business, and I believe in life, it's 90%. Success is 90% attitude, self-image, and self-discipline, 10% job skill. So I was working really hard to give them more of that 10%. But big gains in the 10% only give you marginal gains in results. Once I started understanding that it was them, that what was holding them back most of the time were things that happened way before I met them. They happened in grade school. Like their brother was mean to them. You know what I mean? Like, understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything that happened to us in this life. My favorite book is by Gay Hendricks. It's called The Big Leap. And Gay says that in life, all of us only have one problem to solve. It's the upper limit problem. That we all have a limit based on everything that I just talked about, everything we've experienced. There's a limit of success, money, love, peace that we think we deserve. And when we hit that limit, we find a way, consciously or subconsciously. And I see it, guys that are ready to turn the corner. I know when they're ready to turn the corner. And then they lose their biggest customer. And you think, oh, that's bad luck. And then they get there again and they go through a divorce. And they get there again, they lose their best tech. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not bad luck. This is like banana peel syndrome. Every time he gets close, he slips on a banana peel. But do you understand what I'm saying? This was something. And so what I learned was our job in these peer groups, and that's why as we scale them now, they're so much more effective, because we understand we are there together to help them raise their expectations about what's possible, to learn about what holds each other back, and to help each other with that. And small gains in that 90% make massive gains in results. Some people don't buy into it. They think it's like, hocus pocus.
Right.
But it's as real as this table. I've watched it happen for a decade, and I applied the principles in my own life, right? It's helped me raise my upper limit and achieve things even today that I never would have thought. Like I do things today that I would not have thought possible 10 years ago.
Right. And because I've seen that like even it's funny you say that on an individual level, right? So I had somebody start with me when they were 18 and they liked numbers. So I got my accountant to get a CPA in to coach her.
Yeah.
And I could see that her vision of herself was down here. I never talked to her about, she took to the coaching like fish to water. And all I had to do was have short conversations with her and tracked her up her image. Like I would project her image here by the way I talked to her about what I talked to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I knew all I had to do is just give her the confidence, and she just kept going up and up and up. And the same way with sometimes, especially with sales reps, sometimes you can see, I had this one rep and he was doing really well. And then all of a sudden he doing better and better and better, and then crashed. And I knew he had a rough childhood, like, an abusive, parent. And I'm like, I could hear, just by what was happening.
The voice in his head.
The voice in his head. Well, I could hear, the dad. I could hear the dad, like I could hear that. And then, so I brought him into the office and I said, listen, I believe in you. I said, I want you to take the day off, take tomorrow off. And then I reached into my pocket, I had a bunch of cash, and I'm like, go take a break. Came back and crushed it. I have no idea why I knew that's what he needed. And I was just like, I just want to let him know that I have confidence in him.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I wasn't like, you got to do this. You got to make more calls. You got to, I just knew. And man, that just turned him around, and then boom, crashed through the plateau. But, it's funny that you say that, because we all have limitations, right?
And I think about it like in business because it's measurable. So I'll talk about it like two perspectives, sales and business. So, I consider myself more than an entrepreneur, like at heart, professional salesperson, right?
Right.
That's, I'm proud of that. And I've hired and managed trained hundreds of salespeople. So now I work with the company that acquired me. They're biggest company in our industry. They have 1,000 sales reps. I love working with the young people. But what I always tell them is the frustrating part. Hey, you're asking me for help. Let me ask you a question. Last week, did you make your dials number? Did you have your meaningful conversation number? Well, no. I'm like, go and do that for a couple weeks, and I'll give you my time. But if you're in a proactive job like sales and you're not
Right.
willing to do, because there's a lot we don't control, we influence. If you're not willing to do 100% of the things that are in your control, you're not committed to success yet.
Right. It's a
When
waste
you're
of time.
committed, I'll give you all my time.
Yeah.
But until then, respectfully, I have other people I can spend time with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So, so take us through, like, what do you think, and I've told you this before, like all of the techniques that you talk about, like you talk about having a superpower, like a real superpower, right? Like nobody else does what we do, but all the things that you talk about apply, because a lot of the listeners are not in the IT industry, but everything that you talk about, all the concepts that you have work across the board.
Yes.
Because I've seen people with bits and pieces of like what you do, and that's contributed to their success, because we service a whole bunch of different industries. Like what are the basics? Like if you're talking to like a young Gary Pica, like what do you want to say to him? Like he or she's starting a business. Like what are some of the nuggets that you could share?
So there's a lot, but I'll pick a couple. Number one is most entrepreneurs don't have what I call command over their business. They don't even know, like I'll meet them, people from all types of businesses find their way to me, and I'll always make time for people. They're having problems usually with growth and profitability. I start to ask them questions, key questions about their cost drivers, and then try to drill in. Like, okay, then what are the two metrics to drive that, and what drives that? I have to ask my accountant. I have to ask my operations person. I'm like, hey, you're not running IBM here, dude. Like, you need in every business, right? And I've been both in, professional services business. Everyone's got to be in a role. That role has to be tied to your unit of measure for cost and top line revenue and the metrics that drive success in it. In the software business, we had different metrics, but we had very clear metrics about what makes a software company successful. And not only do you need to have complete command over it, but everybody in their role needs to know what their metrics are and why. I find that most people want to be successful in their job, but they're not put in a job where success is clearly defined, right? They don't know. They don't really know what success looks like. They get frustrated. The owner gets frustrated. The leader gets frustrated, whatever, it's depending on the scale of the business. So number one is having command of the business. And number two is then with that, you got to put accountability in place. That means instrumenting those metrics, looking at them all the way down to everybody in that business has to be accountable to something. And you have to have a business planning process, right? You read the book Scaling Up by Vern Harnish or Gino Wickman, EOS. You have to have an operating system of how you do a 10-year vision and a 3-year targets and a 1-year plan and take that down to quarterly actions. And when you have enough command to know what the most important things to do are, because in every business, there's 100 things you can fix in a year. And most people fix 100 of them and never grow or become more profitable because there's 5 of them that'll actually move the needle.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know which 5 out of the 100.
Right.
Once you have command and know the 5, and then you have accountability system in place that every quarter you're doing a couple of the most important things, it's literally like magic, right? It's literally like magic. And then realize that every business is a go-to-market business.
Yeah.
You're not in the computer business. You're not in the janitorial business. You're not in the recruiting business. You are in the go-to-market business.
What do you mean by go-to-market?
New customers at the right price are the lifeblood of every business. People don't grow. Your people don't get promotions. You don't change their lives if you just work with the same 50 customers. People say to me, "Oh, we haven't lost a customer in 10 years." I'm like, "You must have some pretty crappy customers."
Because you talk about firing customers, how important it is to fire customers.
Yeah, every business I look at, doesn't matter what it is, the math's always the same. They get 70% of their gross margin from 30 to 40% of their customers, and the rest are just dragging them down.
Yeah.
And instead of having that idea that our culture is we bring in new logos, new business every single month, and we bring it in at the right price, and we base it on, our unique competitive advantage. Every business needs that superpower that they can sit down and quickly tell you, let me tell you why the 10 other companies aren't going to solve the pain that you just described to me. Let me tell you why my customers don't experience that. Does that make sense? Yes. Do you understand why my customers are willing to invest a little bit more to get those results? Yes. Do you think someone else could do it for less? So if those other vendors that are going to come in at the same price, do you think they're going to get you based on our conversation? No. What would you like to do?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. When you did started Tru Methods, did you sit down and write out like a detailed business plan?
Not really. Because at that time, I had gotten some money in the bank from my first exit. And the idea was, I'll do some training just to make enough money to pay my bills so I don't have to touch my nest egg.
Yeah.
To figure out what's out there.
Right.
Within 3 months, I had the training model, and then I had a detailed plan for it. Before we launched Peer, I had a detailed plan.
Right.
Before we launched software, I had a plan. So once I got into the industry and figured out what the business was going to be, had a plan. I've had a coach from like the first year. I got a business coach who would help me with the business planning process, come in to our quarterly planning sessions, help guide those things, mentor me on the difference between a goal and an action item, so that I could start to, invest time into becoming a professional business person.
Yeah.
Not a professional software person or IT person or salesperson, like a competent business person of how there's a structure and a way that successful companies operate. You need to operate like that.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I got out of business school. We were putting together business plans for small businesses.
Yeah.
Like they would just hire us out to small businesses would come in and we consult and do business plan. But when I launched technology marketing reports, I sat down and I just for weeks and weeks just wrote out the plan, big binder, operations, sales, the whole thing. And have you experienced this where I'm working through and I'm flipping back from page to page because they're all connected, right? Everything's connected, right? So this connects to that. And I would literally see problems. Like the business is running in my mind.
Right.
Like it's scaling and it's running in my mind. I'm like, well, wait, we're going to have this problem here. Oh, okay, wait. I got to go back here and we're going to put this little process in here to fix this problem over there. Like we knew it was going to scale before, because we just did the test model for like a year in Philly and I knew it was going to take off. And so I sat down with my CFO, who it was her and maybe one other people. And I'm like, you're going to need to hire 7 people. You need to hire one person just to do collections because we were prepaid before and now we were going to be monthly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just hire one person so that all he has to do all day is just collect. So when he calls up, he says, Gary, you owe us this amount of money. My name is Hector, the collector. I got nothing else to do but make sure you pay. But you can see this. But have you seen that, or do you coach that, or with your clients? That was the amazing thing to me because I could see the business running in my head and I could see potential problems. And I'm like, and it's so easy to fix early on because you're like, oh, let me go back to page 17 and right here, I just have to put this little process in place that's going to prevent this problem from happening in the future.
Listen, you just touched on so many important things. We could talk for 2 hours about just your last couple minutes. There's so many nuggets in there. So one is, I want to mention this about a business plan. The key thing that come out of a business plan is know what are the facts you know and control and what are the assumptions. So one assumption might be what your average customer size is going to be. It might be your close rate. Whatever those things are, I highlight them and say, okay, anything that's in yellow is an assumption. We got to put instrumentation in place. Because as soon as we start to get data that one of these assumptions is off, we got to change that plan. We don't want to get to the end of the year and not make the plan and say, oh, yeah, it's because we had a 10% close ratio instead of 20%. Well, there's a plan for 10%. That doesn't mean failure. It's just a different plan. Oh, we got to put more money into lead generation because we're going to need more lead.
Right.
So knowing what those assumptions are. And then the second thing that you touched on with your collections person is specialization. When I go into any business that's not achieving its potential, everyone's doing everything. And I like to put everybody in the smallest box possible. So if you would have had well, I need to hire somebody. I got 3 other people on my team. They'll just do collections. No, they won't.
Yeah.
They won't. It's a proactive job. They're going to do their reactive stuff. Like separating proactive from reactive and then putting people in defined roles. And then the second nugget you gave, which is a big mistake, people don't have process. So as they scale, they got 10 people that do things kind of 10 different ways, where you need to have a defined, written process, checklist, and then accountability over time that there's no drift. And then when problems start to arise, you go back to your process and say, hey, we got to tweak this because things have changed. We're getting some unintended consequences from this. So like all these things that you're touching on, like as matter of fact, they're not matter of fact for most business people. And they're the difference between, if you read Jim Collins, the 50% of businesses in every industry that are at or below break even, and the 10Xers that make all the money. They have all the gross, they have all the gross margins and all the enterprise value. And it's the same way in my industries, the 2 industries, software and IT that I'm in. But those numbers hold up everywhere for the reasons that we're talking about.
Yeah. So let's talk about energy and the chi within the business. Like when you get the steamship rolling, that steam engine rolling. And it was amazing to me because we went from 2 employees to 200 employees in 18 months.
Remember when you took everybody to an island?
Yeah. Yeah. We had lots of trips. But the cool thing was, and I couldn't have done it on my own, right? I couldn't if I was involved in everything. But the cool thing was, and I found out years later, the stuff that was happening behind the scenes that I had no clue about. But like with my CFO, I sat down with her, I showed her the vision, I had the business plan, I showed her, and I'm like, you need to hire, she had to hire 7 people. I'm like, this is what's going to ahead of time.
Right.
Like you need to execute. That was the last conversation I had with her about that. Like, and she just did it. Like the motivation was there and the vision, and she, and I had the faith in her, and also she was trained by a CPA for like a year. So they were like, weaning her off. Like, we don't need to come every day, every week, once a week, once a quarter, once, and she's done. But, and even my sales team, like we would have national sales meetings. You spoke at one of them.
Yes.
And what I found out years later, because we had people we had 15 inside sales reps paired with 15 outside sales reps.
I taught them the schniz.
You did. From London to Los Angeles, right? So remember, we flew everyone in. And there might have been 1 or 2 people that were like, while they're outside smoking the cigarettes. And I'm not there. I'm like the parent, right? Well, apparently some of the, the teammates that, drank the Kool-Aid made it very clear to these people that was unacceptable. Very clear. And, just sort of like fixed it. In a very strong way, where normally people are just silent, and then that little cancer grows because those, the naysayers have the loudest, volume.
Absolutely.
And and they did it in a very strong way.
Look, if you have a good plan, you have vision, you have core values, and you build your culture on that. And I've been lucky enough to experience that in the businesses. At Dynamic Digital, we had that. What I learned during that time period was it's my job to put everybody in position to be successful. They need to know what our mission is. We were going to do something that in that business that nobody had done before. And they got behind it. And the one lesson I've learned, everyone is different. Everyone motivated. When I first started, as an entrepreneur, the biggest mistake I made was I assumed that everybody wanted all the same things out of life that I wanted. It turns out most people are more mentally healthy than me. You know, I got my disc profile one time, and the lady, I said, "Who has this kind of disc profile?" She said, "Really successful CEOs and serial killers."
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was like, "Well, can you be both?"
Oh my God.
But here's what I learned. There's one thing that all of us, every person that I ever hired in my company, we all shared one common thing. We all want to be part of something that's bigger than just us.
Yeah.
We all want to feel like what we do matters. And if you can get there, what happens is what you just said, which is your culture starts to police itself. You know, when I bought that, invested in the second MSP while I had Tru Methods, I didn't work in it. I only invested and coached it. They had an engineer who was a complete cancer, but he was their best engineer. So I said, look, you got to get rid of the guy. And a month went by, and 2 months went by. And then at a company meeting, I saw him roll his eyes at me. And I just went to the young owner. He was like a young kid, like he was like in his late 20s. And I said, look, if he's not gone by Friday, I'm gone. It's him or me. Right?
Yeah.
So he called me Friday night and he said, I did it. I let him go. He's like, well, but he knows certain things. I'm like, there isn't one problem in this business that I haven't solved. And in all the years I've been in it, I'm not scared.
Yeah.
And then when he called me, I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. On Monday evening, I want you to call a company meeting. I want you to tell everybody that you let that person go. And then I want you to apologize to them. That this person was obviously consistently in violation of our culture.
Yeah.
And I let it go too long. And I want you to know, I'll never make that mistake again. You mean more to me than that. I said, then look around the room and you'll know who's naughty or nice by the reaction. And that was a turning point in that business. The definition of a D player is someone who is a high performer and low culture.
Yeah. It's so funny. I have a really similar story. So I was in Nevada, Arizona, flying back, and I sit next to Coach Graham from the Arizona Sun Devils. I'm like, holy shit. Like, this is a D1 football coach. So I started asking him questions, and I said to him that I always ask successful people, like, what's the key to your success? You know what he said, Gary? And I'm like, is it recruiting? Is it this? Is it that? He said, the character of the people that work for me. My number 2 sales rep was, sort of lacking in character, but he's our number 2 guy, right? Comes out of the chute, kills it. And I go back, because if you sit next to a Division I football coach for a plane ride and he's generous enough to talk to you.
One of the hardest jobs on the planet.
And you don't go back and change something in your life, in your business, you're out of your mind. You missed the boat. Like, shut up. Like, do something. Dude, you should walk away with something. I fired the guy, my number 1 sales rep, who would never knock on my door. They never knocked on my door. This is a sales manager. Larry, could I talk to you? Yeah. I recognize that was hard for you to do, but I respect you. Number 3 sales rep comes in, knocks on the door. These people never talk to me.
Yep.
I respect you for that. And then, like you said, boom, like things changed immediately in the sales department. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, and you were saying, like, you have to, like, if you listen, people will tell you what you need to do. See, and I told you the story about Gail Goodman, right? Gail Goodman, she took Constant Contact from 50,000 customers to 500,000 through this process called engagement marketing. And she had hired, I think, 12 consultants. Their full-time job was to go out and give free seminars on how to grow your business through email marketing. 12.
Yeah.
That's a big number. This guy was like, the guy I went to, Shauna wanted me to go. And I'm like, I don't want to go. They're going to, like, lock the doors. You don't understand. Right. You're young. They're going to lock the doors and try to close us like it's a timeshare. He's like, well, I really want to learn. And I'm like, all right. So we drive down there, and I'm like, I'm waiting for the sales pitch. And he says, my name is so-and-so. I worked at DuPont for 30 years and da-da-da-da-da. I'm here to help you grow your business through email marketing. The other thing I want to tell you is that I will never sell to you. I'm not here to sell you anything. And basically he went on to say that if you give something of value to a group of people that could potentially buy from you, when it comes time for them to buy, they will buy your product at a higher price. So he basically was saying, when you get into email marketing, you're going to buy Constant Contact, and it won't matter the price. And that's exactly what she did. And she wrote the book while she was CEO.
Yeah, and then
nobody else covers them.
Yeah, and if you think about now, that's the norm, right? Content marketing is the norm, because what everyone figured out, most businesses have no funnel. Their cost of sales is high, and the results are sketchy, like up and down.
Yeah,
because they have a bunch of people at the top of the funnel who they know nothing about and have no relationship with, and then they get a referral and they either close them or don't close them.
Yep.
There's nobody in the middle where they're along their buyer's journey, where you've given them value, made a relationship. And so on a consistent basis and predictable, you get people who come in at a bunch of them that you're going to get a great close rate on, because you've built this relationship and they're at the right point when they know what you do.
Yeah.
And they're going to engage you when they're the right point in their buyer's journey. And so most businesses don't take the time, to learn that. And what she did is the standard, now. HubSpot took that same playbook and built HubSpot, right? Like they basically just taught people how to do marketing, how to do, both inbound and outbound, but like how to do content marketing. And from it, they, used their software, but it was basically took that same playbook you're talking about.
And it's funny for me being in the lead gen business, and we do lead nurturing for clients, and they're like, well, we want to be able to cancel if we don't see results in 30 days. And you're like, and especially if you're an MSP, you're talking years. I think you were telling me about a deal that you got. I think it was $250,000. It turned out to be a $250,000 deal a year. And you guys had nurtured. And was it a trash company?
Yes.
Can you tell me, go through the process and the timeline and the effort that it took, and how patient you were and how you wrapped up? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. This is someone who we had met with, quoted, they didn't buy, then they went with someone else, then it didn't work out. They called us, got a quote, stayed with their current vendor. And then finally...
Wait, now how much time has gone by?
This has been years.
Years.
Maybe 3 years.
3 years. Okay.
And finally the phone rings. They call my salesperson, Tim, and they're like, hey, listen, can you come out? And by this time, Tim's trained by me. And he's like, why would I come out? And he's like, well, we need it. I'm like, look, we're still the same price. You didn't buy from the first time, and I thought you would. You didn't buy the second time. Like, I'm the boy who cries wolf. My self-image can't bear another rejection from you. I will come out with the expectation that we're going to do business together. If not, please, have I built up enough relationship that you could just put me out of my misery?
Right.
And went out, one call close.
Boom.
And closed that deal. Huge deal for us. And then they became one of our best referrers. We probably got 5 more deals.
Right.
It was the gift that kept on giving. But it's just a matter of, I call it for MSPs. Every business is different. Like my software business was different, but for MSPs or professional services building, the warm 250, you need to have, your goal is to build 250 companies in the area that are A, prospects.
Yep.
That you know a lot about, and they know something about you. And if you do that, you'll get a deal every month.
Yeah. Not right away, but it takes time to ramp that up. And most people give up. And no matter what the time frame is for clients, I see them just give up. I mean, we now do, we do the lead nurturing, and we'll stumble over an appointment. And the amount of times where they're like, oh, it was a bad appointment. And then, the rep went out and it was no good. And then we called the client back and they never called, never showed up. It's mind-boggling. And then the owner of the company they're like, well, what can I do about it?
What do you mean, what can you do? Yeah, you can
And
decide.
they're not like son of a gun. They're just like, well,
Listen, one, everybody in life makes exactly what they're worth, whether they like it or not. Two, you get what you tolerate.
yeah,
We have people that come in, they go a whole quarter in this business without bringing in a new deal. We call it a goose egg. In fact, we have something going on before our October peer meeting that I told them we're going to do something that's never been done in the history of our industry. No one's going to have a goose egg. Everyone's going to have at least one new deal at the right price. And what I tell them is the only reason, if you've been in business for 7 years, that you go a whole quarter without closing a deal is because that's what you'll tolerate. I couldn't tolerate that.
right.
So it never happened to me. I never went a quarter, almost never went a month in the 12 years I ran that business without bringing in a new logo,
Right.
because that's not who I am.
Right.
That's not what I tolerate. And I set my priorities, and I expect from my sales team and my marketing team
yeah.
all the metrics that go that way, because our business depends on it. Success is too important.
Yeah.
And it's not just for me. This is what most business owners don't understand. Hey, it's one thing, okay, like if people give me all the excuses, well, my life and my work-life balance is important. And I'm like, do you think it's harder to run an awesome business than your crappy business? Because it's not.
It's not.
And number
it's easier.
two,
The bigger it gets easier.
and you can make that decision for you. But once you start to hire people, you're making that decision for them. They don't have the choice to go get opportunity. You have to start a thriving business. Then you can create opportunity for them. If you're going to employ people, I think you have an obligation to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
These people put their faith in you, and they can. And if I think about what I'm most proud of, and I watch so many business owners become completely different people and create wealth, and not just the money, but just who they are and their self-image. I'm proud of it, right? That we
Yeah.
help them. But I'm prouder of their teams who benefit it.
Yeah.
And I know personally hundreds of them, and I know where they were, and I see the professionals that they are today. And so I don't know. I feel like I always need goals that affect other people, not just
Yeah.
myself. I'll let myself down, but I don't want to let other people.
Yeah. No, that's the thing that gives me the biggest rush is watching people grow. And even people that go and move on from us that have gone on to work at SAP and become the #1 sales rep in
Yeah.
their group. And there's so many stories where people will call back and say, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you. This, just had this milestone." And that gives you the juice, right? You'll always remember that, but you're not going to
Always.
remember how much you made in 2022. But
People say, "Hey, what's your job?" I'm like, "I make grown men cry." They come up and they tell me a story about where they were and how bad it was and where they are today,
yeah.
And then I usually say, "Stop crying, you big baby." No, I love it. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard to hear,
Yeah.
because we all have a self-image, and I always tell them, it's like, look, I offered the same thing for a lot of other people
Yeah.
who didn't get where you got to. This
Yeah.
is all you, man.
You did it. Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
And I know how hard it is to
Right.
change. It's the hardest thing in the world is to change.
You'll when I'm giving speeches and then you come back the next year, invariably one person will come up and they're like, that thing that you said about this, and they're like, I implemented it and made an improvement in their business. But it's always mind blowing to me that how hard it is for people to make the change. And you can literally, because when you've been at this point, when you've seen people like Gary Pica and the people that are successful and Ryan Clark and all these other people, and you see they all have the same DNA, and you're trying to coach people on what it takes to get to that point. And it's not, there's those hurdles you got to go through. You got to get rid of some people. You got to be forceful. You got to take control. There was a guy, oh my God, I forget what his name is. He said, you have to come up with the process and the plan and the objectives, and then you have to have pig-headed determination to make it happen. Chet Holmes?
Yeah.
Is it Chet Holmes?
Yeah. The ultimate sales machine.
Yeah. Yeah. He says you have to have pig-headed determination to make it happen, because you have to take control, and you have to, because you can't tell people, this is what we knew. You can't tell them once. well, I told them they have to hit these numbers.
Yeah.
But you have to be the one that gets that going. And then the cool thing is once you get a team going of leaders, and then you push that out to the leaders, and then they push it out to the team. That's cool.
And it's funny for me, I've gotten there with, several businesses. And once I've gotten to that point is where I look to exit, because I love building companies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love running them.
Yeah.
Like when it's just bake the donuts, I love
Yeah.
the climb, in the business. But like, you touched on something about, the successful people Success leaves clues. Successful people that I know, number one, they're voracious learners. They read. I don't know anyone super successful that isn't reading and listening and consuming a ton of information. I've read hundreds of books. They get in peer groups. They find mentors. They find people who have done what they would like to do and find a way to make a relationship. And by the way, most people that I know that are real successful are very generous to people who honestly, for the right reasons, want to learn. So there's certain things that almost everybody I know who is a self-starter and self-made share. And so, go do those things. Like, go do the things. Like in business, I ran them out for you, right? They have command, they have accountability, they have a business planning process.
Yeah.
Like there's things that are the core. And, they say it takes 10,000 hours, right, to master something.
Right.
Most people spend 10,000 hours. Like if you want to be a good golfer, you can spend 10,000 hours grooving a bad swing.
Right.
Like it's not just time. It is intention. It is like you said, that desire where I had difficult points in my business, very difficult points in my businesses where I didn't just want to get past it and succeed. I needed to, like I needed air. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Like people were depending on me, my family, my employees, my customers.
Yeah.
And there was just like where you just have to dig in sometimes.
Yeah.
And then learn from it and not make the same mistake. But it's got to become, and when it is, it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
You get to have something that almost no one gets. I've had a career on my own terms.
Yeah.
I found a few things that I do better than other people. I have a couple special talents. They're only a few, but they're deep. And I was able to build my companies around them and make an impact like on my industry. And
Yeah.
you get so much for what you give.
Yeah. And do you find that, like when you're in it and all kinds of stuff is going on, you're solving problems, you're fixing stuff, you're making stuff happen. There's so much that when you look back now, does it blow your mind? Because, are you just focused, like you're just taking care of things, all kinds of shitballs are coming at you, right? Especially in the beginning, your brother talked about the bite in the software business, right? The bite happens and there's no giving up. There's just, and it's just one bad thing after another happen. And you just have to soldier forward. There's no pity party. You're not, you're this mad dash to get through the bite, which I took from your brother. So can you talk about that? Like, do you look back now and say, how the heck, wait a minute, wait, look at yourself from a distance?
I look back over my career and say, I don't know that I could go back and do it again.
Yeah.
Like it was so hard. But at the same time, when I look back, they're the best times.
Yeah.
They're the fondest times. That's where
Yeah.
everything I felt like that my desire was forged, my relationships,
Yeah.
with people. And I'm lucky enough to have some people there I do business with that have been with me from the beginning for 25, years. Yeah. But it is that climb. And it's almost why every 10 years I kind of reset. And now I'm doing all new things again. And at some point, same thing probably will happen. Like everything's got a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I've learned about that. I've learned so much about money. Like I didn't realize what a complex topic, money
What do you
is.
mean? Talk to me about that.
So everyone has a relationship with money. They just don't look at it that way. I always tease some of our members in Tru Methods. I'll say to them when they have a bad quarter, I'm like, why do you hate money? Like when you were like 11, did money like hit you with a spitball in math class and you never made up with money? So when I was selling dynamic digital, again, growing up in Levittown, I never even knew anybody who owned a business. I had nobody.
Right.
And I met
Explain Levittown.
Levittown is a World War II, post-World War II town where 100,000 people lived there in 1,300 square foot homes. They were all the same, just turned a different way. Everyone's dad worked in a factory, did some blue collar, work. They were a contractor. Everybody had the same car in the driveway.
Right.
And so there was no owning a business. I mean, when I, left, ADP and where I was having success in sales to go into the IT business, my parents loved me and were awesome and supportive. But that look in their eye was like, well, we'll always love you, even though you'll never amount to anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I was going to sell the company, I talked to you. I talked to our mutual mentor, Tom Melvin. But I had one successful customer who had sold a bunch of businesses, had success. He was a customer of mine. I called him. I said, I know you're a customer, but I got this going on. He's like, I'll be there tomorrow morning. And he sat down, and Larry Gerhard. And I said, he goes, tell me about the deal. I told him. He's like, take the deal. I'm like, well, I didn't even show you my EBITDA. He's like, I know basically you, and I know basically your business. He goes, I'm going to tell you something now. It's going to be hard for you to understand. Where you are right now, the day that wire transfer hits, your relationship with money is going to change. And you're going to make way more money on your second deal than you will your first. Don't worry about $1 million here, $1 million there. Before they change their mind, take that deal. And so I did. I took the deal, and then I did my earnout, and I started Tru Methods, and I got to the point where I saw that it was going to be successful. And I called him and said, you probably don't even remember this conversation, but you told me this, and everything you said would be true. And, what I've learned about money is somebody else always has more than you, right?
Yeah.
Money comes in, money goes out, and we all take the same amount with us when we leave. In most cases, having more is better than having less, right? Than it. Accumulating after-tax dollars in your personal bank account is one of the most challenging things to do. Once you get it, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. Because everything you do, you can do it in the best way.
Right.
And so people work so hard, and they set income goals instead of net worth goals. Don't set income goals.
Yep.
Set net worth goals, because now you're going to make decisions differently. You're going to understand how oppressive ordinary income is. And most of us as business people, our cash flow comes through. And it's just like, I was talking to a guy who's got a business, okay? I've known him for years. It's starting to be successful. And he said, hey, I'm thinking about raising money. I'm like, well, how much are you going to raise? Well, I have somebody who wants to put in, $2 million at this valuation. And I'm like, that's a pretty good valuation. Like, what's your cash flow? He said, $2 million. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing with the $2 million? And he said, well, we distribute it. I said, okay, so you're going to make $2 million. You're going to pay 39% federal tax plus your state tax, and then put it in your bank, and then take somebody else's money and give up part of your company. Why not just invest your cash flow tax-free and own 100% of your business? He's like, well, I never thought about it that way. And I'm like, exactly, because people aren't thinking about net worth, how taxes implement it, and how to build your net worth. And if you have that mentality, it won't show up tomorrow. But if you make all your decisions that way for the next 3, 5, 7 years, I have my little card literally that has my net worth goal on it crossed out as I made them. And I far exceeded it because I understood the process.
And the earlier you get that mentality, the better
Makes all
off.
make sense, right?
Yeah. When I switched schools, that was the big thing. You know what I mean? Like everyone was talking about salaries, and then when I went to business school, it was about accumulating wealth. In fact, I remember the first day, first class, when I went to business school, the professor said, what's the number one way to accumulate wealth? And these are all they were all a lot smarter than me. Kid raises his hand. Johnny says, marry money. Exactly. That's the number one way to accumulate wealth.
What's the second best way?
Real estate.
That's
and
great.
I should have listened to number one.
Yeah, me too.
But that even as a kid, and knowing that early on, because it does change your focus, because it's and the other thing that I learned from business school, this guy came in and he's like, guys are all going to be successful. He says, listen, when you start to make money, don't buy the Ferrari.
Yep.
And those were like two of the main things that I took away from school, was like, accumulate wealth, don't buy the Ferrari. And I watched people, as soon as they started making money, they buy the biggest possible house they can.
Oh, I watched it. So there was like the company I worked for, some young people made some money last summer. There was like a small event. Yes, people in their 20s and 30s. And I know their financial situation, and I know how much everybody got.
Right.
You should have seen the watches, the Porsches. And I'm saying, guys,
Stop.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Like, listen, you and I have some nice things, right?
Yeah.
But we only got them after all the boxes were checked, right? For our kids, like for me, my kids' school, our retirement, our families, like all of those things. Now, okay.
Yeah.
It's funny. I grew up with this scarcity mentality, right? And so I find it hard to spend money. I had to like get some therapy, right? to figure out my relationship, with money, because I was taught it was always something you save. And for the first part of my life and career, it served me so well.
Yeah.
I lived way under my means. I always felt I had a cushion. I could take more risks.
Yeah.
But at some point, I got past it, and then that same mentality started to hold me back about enjoying my life and what I had done. And I find there's a lot of principles we have in life that can serve us well to a point, and then they can no longer serve us. Like always being aware of what those things are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big thing is putting yourself up. So, you can be in a situation as you move forward where your options are expanding. Or you can put yourself in a situation as you move forward, your options start to collapse. And I know I've made like crazy money on real estate deals as a young kid because I was doing well, living in like a crappy apartment, driving a 6-year-old car, and I'm sitting at lunch with a broker, and I gets off the phone. I'm like, hey, what was that? Well, we're looking at buying this, shopping mall thing. It's a particular situation. And I'm like, I'm in. And then to be able to just like write the check, and we wound up, 3 months later, things changed anyway. It killed in 3 months.
I know that deal. I know that was an amazing deal.
Right. But for me, it was like, because I hadn't bought the Ferrari, I hadn't bought the big house. I didn't buy a house until I could retire. The first time I could retire.
Yeah.
Like after I bought this.
It's what I tell people. Like, listen, I have a couple nice properties that are good because they have family experiences around them. I'm thankful for those.
Yeah.
I could get rid of them tomorrow. The only thing I have that would be so hard to give up is choices.
Yeah.
I have choices of who I have to deal with, how I spend my time.
Yep.
And if it wouldn't have turned out the same way, if I just would have gotten halfway here and had a different lifestyle than I live, but had choices, I wouldn't be 1 millimeter less happy than I am. Like, to me, everything else is trimmings and trappings.
Yeah.
But knowing that I have choices and can help people around me like have more choices. And I see people that I've known for 20 years in this business that I'm in who never got over the hump. And now they're in their late 50s, early 60s. They're running out of gas.
Yeah.
They don't have choices. And it's really hard to watch, man.
Yeah. Even younger, you watch people make these decisions, and then, friends or family or whatever, and you can't talk to them because no one's going to listen. And they're like, how did I get here? And I'm like, okay, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
when you did this, and then 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and then 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and then when you doubled down over here. But I think that's important. If you're going to have your own business, you have to postpone the pleasure, man. Don't buy the Ferrari. Live, you said it. Live under your means.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. Like, I lived on like a sliver. Happy to do. And also for me, I didn't care because I was so jazzed about what I was doing. So jazzed about the team. So jazzed, right? So much energy from like, and getting through the bite, right? And then the waterfall that comes after that because people don't get through the bite. But man,
when it comes fast.
And it comes fast, and then it almost can't stop if you've put all those pieces. And then you learn, like I'm doing a project, like a real estate project, and it's a pain in the ass, right? And everything is going wrong. Everything is going wrong. And I'm like, I know, and then not only that, things were going wrong with the projects, things were going along, I had just a bunch of bad stuff that happened all at the same time, like last year. It was a horrible year. And I'm like, oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And I knew at a certain point, I knew like I think it was April, I knew there was an event that was going to happen in April that had nothing to do with changing the forge, but it was just like a marker. And I'm like, I know after April, it's all going to turn around.
Right.
And that helped me get through the bite because, and just hitting one shit ball after the other. And then about April, this happened, then that happened, then that happened. And then it all got into place. But it's funny because you don't even think about it like when you're young and you're just going through the bite. I think if you have that mentality or if you can foster that mentality within yourself, and I think part and parcel to that is not having the external problem of like, I'm overextended. I can't pay my rent, or I can't pay the mortgage, or I don't know how people would deal with the pressure that you and I had. Now you had additional pressure. I don't have a family. You have the additional pressure of a family, but if you overextend yourself, can you imagine like how would you have a heart attack?
And then the opportunities, when it came time, well, I'll tell you two things about opportunity and the bite. We decided to build the software. Right. I never built software. Didn't know anything about it. Worked with someone. We built this software. We launched it. We had 50 customers, 100, 150. And then they started using it for way more than we thought. And we started having performance problems. Number one, I funded all the development out of my pocket. I didn't raise any money. Right. I wasn't beholden to anyone. And we were in the meeting with the developers and they said, listen, we can't fix this. Like, it's the technology. We have to rebuild it
from the ground up.
And it took a year. And, my customers were miserable because we weren't fixing it. We couldn't add any new features to the old software.
Can't add customers.
We had churn. And finally the new software launched and it was scalable and fast and we could add features more quickly and we went on. But one, I had to get through that, and two, I had the financial wherewithal to be able to do it. But if I didn't, it would have been a death sentence.
Right.
It just would have closed it up.
Right.
And it turned out to be, the gift that kept on giving.
And also,
we wouldn't have got through it if I wouldn't have had some pockets.
Right. And also the double whammy would be if you didn't have your core business in line, like working on autopilot,
cash flowing
and not needing 100% of your time to do that. And then you're trying to do something else. And now it takes time away from the core business. And then all of a sudden, and I'm sure you've seen this, where then all of a sudden the core business, starts to go downhill because you're stretched too thin.
I've seen it many times. Hey, can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
That just happened yesterday?
Yeah.
You're going to love this. So, I don't know. My wife, there's always something like, I get up the other day, I'm by myself in the house, right? And I see these guys, they're like, they do work around our house and stuff.
Right.
And they pull up with a giant lift. And I'm like, guys, what's going on? He's like, oh, we're changing the color of the trim. And I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So at the highest point, it's like 3 floors up and the house is raised. It's probably 40 feet, right, in the air. So they get this lift. At first, they can't figure out how to get it. They didn't know everything about the lift. They weren't
Right.
trained. And there's two guys. So I go in and have a meeting, and I get a text. Hey, sorry to bother you. We're both up in the lift, and apparently we've run out of gas. So now, Larry, they're stuck up there.
40 feet in the air.
Thank goodness they had their phones, or they might have died up there.
Thank God they had your number.
Yeah. And the only reason I had the number is because he had pictures of something, and I just gave him my number like 10 minutes, like before. And so I went outside. First, I made fun of him for several.
Did you take pictures of him?
Oh yeah.
God, you gotta show me those pictures.
I took pictures of him and told him, I'm like, hey, congratulations! I'm going to write a book. You just made my book, But I did an audio message today I do one for my, I have a little mini, not a whole podcast, little thing I do. And I told the story and I said, listen, this made me think of my entire life in business where people do something, they don't think ahead, they don't have a process, they don't have a checklist, right? Because number one on the checklist is make sure there's enough gas, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're two people and you're both going to go up. And there's no one on the ground, right?
Right.
So in most cases, look, that's a safety concern, right?
Yeah.
Most times our people, people that work in for most entrepreneurs, they're not risking their lives. And but the results are the same. They don't have a process for this, so it's not done the same way every time. They don't have inspections to see that those checklists are being followed on a regular basis. Like, to me, it's a funny story, but it's a microcosm of running a good business. And so I'll sit down. I'm friends with the business owner. He's a really good guy. And I'm going to sit him down and said, look, this is a symptom. I know a lot of other things about your business because of what happened.
Right. Yeah,
This is not a
the
one-off.
mouse.
This is
Seeing the mouse.
This is a symptom and a comedy.
Yeah. It's so it's funny to me because you do a deep dive into all these different businesses. What do you think is like the number one thing that holds people back? Because you're presenting them with a proven method.
100%.
Proven method. We're going to take you from $1 million a year making nothing to 6 million making
25%.
Yeah, making $1.5 million, $2 million a year. Just got to follow the process. Oh, by the way, there's these other guys walking around that did that and sold their companies.
If you have any questions, you can ask them.
They're all right here. So what is the number one thing that holds people back from sort of getting to that level?
It kind of goes back to the big leap theory, which is it makes people, I call it like the haze. People have this haze by which they see reality, and they, for some reason, hold on to their beliefs about what they have done, even if those things have not made them successful. And I'm fascinated by it. Like, why some people find it so hard, even though they've seen me do it twice, they've watched, I have 100 other examples, and they can't swallow it whole. They can't get themselves. It's almost, I don't know whether it's like they think they're admitting defeat, that their way was wrong.
Right.
Which it is wrong, but it's okay. It's just that that's what you knew. Now you know something different.
Right.
And once you know it, you have an obligation to yourself and your team and your customers to do better. But it's just something with certain people. And you've seen it even with individuals, employees. The same mentality happens. They can't get out of their own way, man.
Yeah.
Like, they can't get out of their own way. The only problem they have is themselves.
Is one of the things that that you find with the ones that are, because you've seen the ones that like, well, probably like with you, we gave you like a little bit of advice and you took it like 1,000 levels higher. Have you found that with some of your clients where you're like, hey guys, this is what I've done, and then they blow it out of the wall? Yeah.
Off to the races. And when they ask you questions, they're really good questions.
Yeah.
And they just, I met these, before I had Tru Methods, I was in a peer group with my company, and there was these two young guys in their 20s. They had a company that was mainly project-based, and they were making some money, But when they saw our numbers, they said, "Can we come?" They're from California.
Right.
Can we come to Philadelphia and learn what you did? And they came, and I took them through everything. And they said, "We're going to go back and do this. We're burning the ships." And they had a couple horrible quarters. They went to kick them out of the peer group. I'm like, they're going to eat your lunch. The guys they run like a $30 million business at 25%. They work about 10 hours a week, you know. But the funny thing is, they changed just one thing.
Give a little bit of leader. Is your phone off now?
It is. Totally.
All right. Jeff will, the producer,
edit
will
that out.
edit it out.
But the funny thing is, they had all this success, but they never got to the same profitability that I had because they changed one thing. He said, "We're going to do everything, but this one thing, we're going to do it this way because we can make it better." And I'm like, I would do it first my way, you know, but they were so sure. So it wasn't enough. They swallowed enough of it that they had great success. And I'm so happy and proud for, you know, of them and what they've accomplished. Like, they're the top of our industry. But it could have been better.
Yeah. So, you know, and the thing is that the fact that they're like, we want to get on a plane and come to Philadelphia and meet with you. Is that an unusual thing, or do you have a lot of people like, that's a tell, isn't it?
I haven't had business cards in 15 years. People say, "Do you have a business card?" I'm like, "No." Like, "Why do you have business cards?" I'm like, "You're not going to call me." Look, Larry, you know, I speak all over the world, right? At events.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Gary has literally spoken all over the world. And if you ever get the opportunity to hear him speak, the most amazing speaker I've ever heard in my entire life. You came and did like a sales meeting for us, and I was absolutely blown away. And I've been the fest. And if you ever get the opportunity, even if you're not in the IT business, you should have like an admission for like regular other businesses.
Just come and listen. Yeah,
come and listen.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
No, but it's true. It's the way that you speak. But anyway, you've spoken all over the world.
I'm passionate about it. I've worked hard at that skill set. I've had to develop it. But every time I go, people line up and they want to talk to me. And what I find is many of them, one, they don't ever ask me a question. They just tell me about like, "Oh, I really enjoyed your presentation and you've just confirmed everything that we're already doing." I'm like, "That's great." I'm like, are you throwing 25% to the bottom line? Well, no. I'm like, "Then please don't tell everybody I'll sue you for punitive damages." You know what I mean? You're not. I'm like, "Listen, dude, you got me here. I got 5 people behind you. Do you want to ask me a question?"
Yeah.
But it just shows the mentality. It's the same. That really answers your other question. What holds people back? They just want to spend their time telling me about a bunch of stuff. It's like, listen, I can ask you 2 questions. I know your whole business. No offense. Like, not to be cocky, but I should be able to. I've been doing this for 15 years. If I can't do that, I stink.
Yeah.
You know? And right away, I get those people out of the way as quickly as possible. And the ones that come and they're asking questions, I'll stay all night with them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really have time to hear I don't need to, and I don't want to, for you to make you feel better.
Right.
To tell me your whole story for your business that you haven't unlocked the potential of, man.
They want to hear
themselves talking to you. And by the way, is there an MSP with good breath?
Oh my God. That's funny. You know, so I made a note because you were talking about, do you think this lack of, when I say this, I mean it in the good way, lack of ego is one of the keys to like super successful people. And I mean that in terms of mistakes, in terms of like, hey, we decided to go here. No, we're not, that's not working. Let's pull back. Do you think that that's an important component or something that you've seen consistently with, you know, sort of the rock stars that you deal with? And I say lack of ego when it comes to like, you've made a mistake and take, you know, just, okay, that was a mistake and move forward. Because you were talking about like these people that can't get past like that they've made a mistake. Or do you find that
100%? The most successful people I know, to the outside, they may seem like they have an ego because they're confident and they're driven. But as you get to know them, you realize that they're not. Listen, I work for a guy Fred Vicola. He's the CEO of Kaseya. He's probably the most successful person that I have a personal relationship with. I mean, he took a company that was literally on the edge of going out of business, and now they are, $1.5 billion business. I've learned so much. And the thing about him is, he's got this persona of, like, from the outside, like he's hard driving, but in watching him work, his thing is not enough people push back on him.
Right.
Like, he is open-minded. He'll consider everything. And that's the best quality you can have, is to have everything open for change, that you don't fall in love with anything that you thought up or have done. It's all open, and you can learn not just from people. I've been in peer groups where I've learned a lot from the least successful people in the group, because they didn't put it all together, but they figured out some things.
Yep.
Like, a lot of times they'd have these ideas, they couldn't implement them. We implemented them.
Right.
Like, you can learn from everyone. And so arrogance, and I think that's what we're talking about. Some people have a subtle arrogance that is just a complete waste of energy, man. And what does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah. And you said, because I've seen people dig their heels in, and you're just trying to throw facts and, plain math. Here's the math. I'm going to take, and I've literally had people say, well, I can't argue with your logic, and obviously your math is correct, because the math is really simple. It's addition, multiplication, subtraction. It's we're not talking about a Poisson distribution in statistics. It's just really calls, But, I agree with your math. I agree with your logic, but I'm going to go the opposite direction. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah, you watch Bar Rescue?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love John Taffer.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, hey, that's why your first wife left you, But how many times as you go in there, he knows the math inside and out.
Yep.
And then you find out 3 months later, this failing bar who start to have success, they take everything back because they could. It's exactly the mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I think, but if you do expose yourself, and I think jumping on a plane, like I did that. I was at a trade show and I saw this kid, Garth Moulton, who they started a company called Jigsaw. Do you remember Jigsaw?
Yep.
And I saw this kid. There were other companies kind of similar. And I'm like, this kid's going places, because this kid had the chi. He just had the energy. And I'm like, where are you guys based at? He's like, California. I'm like, coming to visit you guys. So I met him and Jim Fowler, the co-founder. And they were in the bite at the time. You know what I mean? Like, they're, slugging it out. And, because you go there because you're going to learn something from these young punks, and you go out there and you sit down with them. And I spent a day or two with them. And then they wound up selling it to Salesforce for like $100. It was funny because they were going to sell it to one company. He was in Philly, and normally he's like, very chatty. And I'm like, what happened? He goes, well, I can tell you now, that there was a non-disclosure, but the deal fell through. We were going to be bought for like, I don't know, 90, 100 million. I might get these numbers wrong, but and I sized it up in a second. It was like a 150-year-old company. I'm like, that's a bunch of old fogies. They couldn't stand they couldn't stand writing a check to some young punks for that amount of money.
Yep.
Even though it would be a major game changer, their platform would be a major game changer for that company. I said, they're a bunch of punks. I said, number two, this is going to be the greatest day of your life, because it's going to turn out better. And then 6 months later, Salesforce buys them for $1.50.
Yeah.
And but I knew, and you got to, have you done that where you've met people and you're just like, I'm coming out to see you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can think of a handful of times. I had one thing where I was presenting at it was actually a Kaseya event before they acquired me. And I got back to my office, and I got a call from a guy and said, Gary, this is Stephen Little. Do you know who I am? I'm like, no. He's like, well, I was the keynote speaker. I wrote these 3 business books. One of them's great, called A Milkshake Moment. And I said, well, listen, I'm sorry, but I had so much going on, I didn't attend the keynote. He said, well, to prepare, I wanted to go, and I sat in some sessions so that I can learn some stuff about the industry before I spoke. And I sat in one of your sessions, and then I came back and sat in the second one. He goes, one, I want to tell you, you're a really, really good speaker. He said, but can I tell you some things without hurting your feelings? You know? And I'm like, yeah, I've been speaking for 10 minutes. Like, this is really early on, like in my career.
Right.
And he told me a few things like that I could do better. And he said, look, if you're open to it, I want to hear how you built your business model. Like, I think some of it's applicable to what I do in information marketing, and I'm willing to coach you, you know, on being a professional, you know, public speaker. And so he came, and we spent a whole day together, and we spent half the day on his business model, and then the other half, he gave me homework, and then he had me record some of my presentations. He gave me some different comics to watch to pick up certain things, and but yeah, I've had a handful of those situations where I've met someone, and most people, surprisingly, but they always figure you out first. They won't just let anybody come to visit them.
Right.
They want to make sure that you're sincere, you're doing it for the right reason, that you have potential, and I always try to say if there's anything that I have to offer.
Yeah.
You know, as well.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And so many people just won't, you know, where that opportunity presents itself, like with these kids meeting you and saying from California.
Yeah.
Where the opportunity is there, they got a chance to talk to you and they're like, can we come out? Like, what's the worst thing it's going to say? Well, no. But then they do, and it changed the direction of their company. But also you got to recognize, like, who do you want to hang out with?
And you're not going to figure it all out in your office by yourself. Or you already would have, man.
Yeah, you can't.
You don't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers.
Yeah.
And the more you build it, and the more of those conversations you have, and the more books you read, your base level of command, you know, and it's funny, you know, I give people advice sometime and they'll be like, well, that's easy for you to say, you know, you're Gary Pica. I'm like, yeah, I've been Gary Pica for 10 minutes. Do you think I was Gary Pica when I started in a business where we couldn't make payroll? Stop it. Everyone has to inch up their self-image, you know, over time.
Yeah.
If I had to work over broken glass to get here, you know, and to get the reputation and the self-image, you know, that I have today. And part of that, though, is because I am, like, out in public, you know, and I tell all my team this. Everyone is their own brand. And everything you do, every single thing you say, every joke you make, every facial expression that you make when someone says something, it all adds up to how people feel. Not just what they think, but what they feel about you. Do you know how people feel about you? And if you don't, you should start figuring that out. And it may not be what you think.
Yeah.
People may not feel about you. And when you learn to control how you make people feel, everything in life gets easy.
Yeah.
Your job gets easier. If you're an entrepreneur, it all gets easier. And it's what was that? Maya Angelou said that, right? People don't remember what you said. They only remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And we got to take responsibility. Again, everybody makes exactly what they're worth, whether they like it or not. Like, we got to take responsibility that everything we do. I just had a situation this week where another senior executive, I made a joke about something on a call. And I thought it was funny. I didn't think of it. But he ended up talking to someone else. And it hurt his feelings, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I probably misjudged our relationship. He's a good guy, you know. I'll have to go back now and clean up after myself.
Yeah.
You know, but it just made me think. Again, it's like, okay, Gary, tighten it down. Not to act like someone you're not.
Right.
But just be thoughtful about everything you say and everything you do. Is it necessary, kind, and true? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find, like, I remember, like, you know, like I said, when you're, like, really making things happen and a lot's going on. And sometimes you have shitty stuff going on in your personal life. And I remember driving into work so many days, like, it's showtime. Like, you got to get all that stuff in the rear mirror because everyone, like, once you get to a certain size, everyone's looking at you.
Yep.
Everyone's reading all the words that you say. And so you're not being fake, but you just don't want to project the wrong the wrong thing, because if I come out all bummed out, they're like, oh, is there something wrong with the business? No, it's because I got crappy stuff going on in my personal life. And you have to, you got to say, sometimes you got to say, like, it's showtime. I remember trying to pump myself up, like, it's showtime, because everybody's dependent upon you. And, but do you think,
but you have to learn that. I'm going to say this. In my first business, early in my first business, I made people put up with me.
mm-hmm,
Like, I had some anxiety around it.
mm-hmm,
I call it like a generalized feeling of impending doom.
mm-hmm,
And we had to go. And over time, like, it's not that people disliked me and they all respected me. Like, I was sincere and a good person, but my personality made people put up with me. And I thought that was part of what made us successful. And it really, I learned later, was holding us back. And that that feeling I had was just an excuse. It wasn't what was making me successful. It was my knowledge, my skill, my perspective. And I could do that and get to the same point and hold people just as accountable without making them feel that way. But that's a lesson I had to learn as a young business owner.
Yeah, well, you're making me think about, like, because, do you really know how people perceive you, or if your, persona or whatever it is helping? Because I'm looking back now and I'm like, maybe it was good. And I'm like, maybe it wasn't the best. But how would you possibly, because nobody, it's hard to get the people that are working with you to tell you, how am I coming off? I mean, you can ask them, but that's a hard thing.
Can I tell you then? I just came to me. I made this part of my keynote speech at my event in this past January, Schnitzfest. I said, of all the things I've learned that I talked about today, if I really had to boil it down to one characteristic that's most important, it would be self-awareness.
Yeah.
They did a survey and they asked people, if they're self-aware, and like 90% of people said they were self-aware. Then they gave them, it was like 1,000 people. They gave them a questionnaire about themselves, and then they gave it to people around them to see the difference. And only 15% of those people were actually self-aware.
Right.
The rest were not. And like 15% of them were delusional.
Yeah.
About how they saw themselves compared to how other people saw them. And I think it's the core of everything we've been talking about today, of what holds us back and it's the hardest thing to change, because by definition, it's hard to change when you don't even see yourself clearly.
You can't see yourself. It's so hard to get, you can't get honest feedback. You know what I mean?
And you can't take it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you see yourself in a different way. And so that's something that I work hard on. One thing that I'll do is I'll journal.
Yeah.
Not about like a diary, but journal about things that happened, like evaluating how I handled them or how I felt or how I think I made somebody else feel.
Yeah.
Like that helps me try to become more self-aware. And, my team today, they call me the kinder, gentler Gary.
See, that's some feedback. Now you have feedback,
Yeah, people have been with me 25 years say, you didn't know him back then.
Yeah.
When he had a flamethrower. When he used to come in literally with a flamethrower, And but what I learned is that most of the time, whether it was employees or whether it was the entrepreneurs that I coach, it wasn't that they didn't want to do what I was telling them to do. They couldn't. They had so little self-awareness and so much resistance that they brought with them into the situation before we met. And so instead of getting like mad and flame throwing them, I had some compassion and came up with other ways.
Right.
Because I viewed it differently.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think what's important, and it all depends on, what your goal is in life. Like if you can be successful and there's a path where you can be successful and be a complete asshole. You know what I mean? Terrorize people into submission. But why?
Well, you're saying financially successful.
Financially successful. Yeah. I don't count that as success.
Yeah.
I don't count dickheads.
Yeah, listen, I know
Success.
I've got to meet a lot of people
Yeah.
with a lot of money that are the most miserable people
And horrible individuals.
and horrible
Horrible
who
individuals.
feel like they
Yeah.
play by different rules. And you know, I consider my dad a successful person. I pay more in taxes in a week than he ever made in a year. But he had a job. He didn't love it, but he did it for 35 years.
Yeah.
He owned his home. He owned his car. He put 4 kids to college. He retired when he was 60, got 25 glorious years with his pension and Social Security. He's the happiest guy. I know. Like,
Yeah.
that's about as successful
Yeah.
as you can get.
Yeah.
And sometimes I almost feel like, you know, some of the success I've had has been awesome, and I'm so thankful for it. But it also complicates life, and it can put up some barriers also
Yeah.
to contentment and happiness. And so, I mean, I'm going to say the last probably 5 years, I'm continue to work really hard on that, right? To be more present and thankful, and to look for those little turns you can make off, but without knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you said that, you know, you think about how you make people feel. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to be successful, do it with finesse and like elevate people and make people feel better, and like, you know, be like a positive influence. Like, do it with finesse.
Listen,
like you
you
can
and I go
hammer some
months
stuff.
without talking to each other,
Yeah.
right? But when one of us calls each other, normally when we pick up, the first 30 seconds, we're both just laugh before we say
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
that's what you're going for,
Right. But and, you know, and listen, we all know people who are like not nice people, and then, you know, they try to make up for their sins at the end of their, you know, at the end of their life. But I think that makes it, because that's where you're, and we talked about this earlier. Those are the things that you're really proud of, like when you help people out, and you know, when you help customers or the people that you work with, and even when they move on to other careers. And I'm sure you've had the same thing happen. Like, I've crushed it. Like, so many people, even interns. We had some of my buddies. He's like, hey, my kid's, you know, he's in college. You know, he wants to come in. I want him to come in and work with you. So we put him in inside sales. Then he goes out, goes to Wall Street and crushes it. And it's like probably 30 or 40 now. And they're like, he still says that, you know, the stuff that he learned, you know, when he worked at Wendover, you know, helped him propel him through his career on Wall Street. And that's the rush, right?
One of my interns from Dynamic Digital ended up founding a very successful software company with a huge, you know, exit, you know. And I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like when your intern blows past you like you're standing still.
Oh my God.
So great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Yeah, that's the cool stuff. But anyway, well, listen, Gary, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
We said it all.
Hey, so you have a podcast?
Yeah. Well, right now I just do something just for like the customer base.
Okay.
That I do. But I think today I've been talking about, I have a outline for a podcast that I want to do. And I think after coming here today,
Yeah.
I think you motivated me
Oh, good.
to get it launched, and you'll have to be one of my first guests.
Oh, I'd be honored. Be honored, man. This has been great. This is a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A lot of fun.
Yeah, great.